I'm by this boutique hotel. Now, the girl was the head of sales. She was a sales manager. Remember I told you I was part of this network of all the hotel sales managers for downtown Chicago? And sales staff, sales managers and staff, and it was awesome. It was a great networking group. And I was looking forward to it. This is when I was with Jen, so this is in the early 2000s. And I would have stayed with the group, but things happened in my life and I had to terminate my relationship. I was forced out because of, getting screwed over by people. But it was a great group of people, truly. And we used to talk about ideas of how to further Chicago's hotel and hospitality industry. And it was really good discussions. Now, this hotel right here used to have like the hottest nightclub in Chicago. Now, the line wasn't on the main street. This door right here was only for hotel guests. You can go in and out this door for hotel guests. Around the corner up here, this is a valet stop. Around the corner where you see this car right here, there's another door. This is Eurostar Properties, Eurostar Hotel. There's another door right around this corner on Erie. This is on Erie. And people lined up on the side street, which was right, keeping them off the main thoroughfare, keeping them out of the front door, and interfering with standard hotel procedures or hotel guests going in and out. You had to be a hotel guest and that, truly, or dining at one of their facilities. But the club was on the side, and it was hot. But what happened? They overserved people, and they did, and people got into fights. They let bad people in, one. Number two, they overserved people. You let bad people in, and then you overserve people, and what happened were a bunch of fights. And that interfered with the hotel. The guests complained profusely, going up to the lounge, and they're like, yeah, great hot nightclub, and everything's awesome. And they go in and get in fights in that, and people are like, I'm not staying at this hotel again. And so that nightclub is no longer. It happened at the W, same thing. They started letting in bad people. Those bad people were doing drugs and getting in fights and truly, at the W Hotel on the lakefront. They had to close down that nightclub. Kaboom. Gun violence. It was hot. That's where I met Prince, or saw Prince. I didn't personally meet him, but he was in the VIP room. I had access to the VIP room. And they closed it down because somebody got shot, and there was other violence with that. China Club in Chicago. It was hot. They let in the wrong club, and they had the wrong people going, so the doormen they hired were more thugs, and they ended up almost beating some guy to death, and they lost the lawsuit, and they shut down the China Club in Chicago. Remember, there was a China Club in New York, I think it was, and then they opened it here, and it was hot. My friend Max Watts and everybody used to go there. They had music. It was the hottest thing. But they had the wrong people in line, and you need to vet people, and this is where Open Table comes in. You have to have a reservation to stand in line now. You can't just walk up and stand in line. They have to know you. You have to card the people in line. You have to qualify to wait. That means the people are pre-selected in the line. And this is how you work your club. You have to go through Open Table, and you can sign up for general admission. And this is how we vet. And we go through a background check, and we vet you to see if you've ever had a problem with our club. We keep histories of everybody. Everybody gets a band when they come in. Everybody gets a wristband with an identifying code. And that band has to stay on while you stay at the club. And when you leave, we cut the band. You can't take the band with you. We cut the band. Just like I watched Greenland, they banded everybody and they scan them. But when you leave, we cut the band and we keep the band. It's proprietary. You're not taking the band with you. And you can't lose the band. Like we used to band everybody at the Wildcat House. It was to identify that you've been carded and you're in. So people couldn't sneak in because we had minors trying to sneak in from our under 21 side. So everybody in the 21 side had to have a wristband. And so they cut them and then they tape them together and that. You had to show ID again. If the band was anyway altered and we saw it, we wouldn't just let people in. Here's the band. We take the band and do our finger around the band, making sure the band wasn't altered in any way. So it wasn't just like, oh, here's the band, I'm coming in. No, we got to look at the band, making sure the band wasn't tampered with. And those bands now can have tamper-proof in them. So if somebody cuts some of that, the band turns a color. But everybody that goes in is banded and gets an identification number that goes with their open table. And it goes with their ID and everything else. And you're approved to wait in line for the club. So everybody going in is pre-screened. And the doorman worked the line. And if you're not on the system and you have to show your QR code, surely, show your QR, it pulls up your face, all that profile. You have to have a picture of yourself and information, and they ask for your ID and match it to your profile, and you're approved to stay in line. But anyone entering the line has to be carded immediately. And they have to have a reservation to be in line. And you tell people, if you do violence in the club, you will be put on our blacklist. You will not be admitted to the club. For certain things, you'll get banned for a certain amount of day. Other things are permanently banned. We catch you doing drugs in the bathroom. We catch you stealing. Certain things are permanent bans, which can be appealed, year, 5 years down the road. But truly, you're banned. That means you can't even stand in line. And we call for trespassing and loitering. This is why trespassing and loitering is very powerful. Even on public sidewalks, you're not allowed to be there. You have to have an open table. You have to have permission. We rent that from the city. It's called a permit. They have the patio license. It's the same type of license for that segment, so you can set up, your line and everything, and they have to stand in orderly in the line and everything. And with that, people can go in and use the bathroom. And you tell them, if you don't come back out, you haven't been let in. You can go in. You have to be scanned in and given permission. And when you leave, we can temporarily scan you out, but you have to return. We need the band. And if you keep the band, you're banned for 30 days immediately. Why? Because you're stealing proprietary information. And we want the band back. But if you leave without the ban, it might be even a permanent ban. I would make it a permanent ban. Because somebody does that, they're trying to counterfeit, or the possibility of counterfeiting is very high. And they're trying to, get around your security. So if you don't turn in the band, you can be permanently banned. So you better come with the band on your arm and return the band. And if you went out, passed out, and went home, forgot, and somehow that band better still be on your wrist. And you tell them when you get home and that, if you accidentally leave the band, don't tamper with it. And come back the next day and we'll take the band off for you. And you won't be banned from the club. We need our proprietary product back. But this allows you to tag everybody in the club. And that means people, serial killers, serial rapists, people that are there to do very bad things are identified, and they're on there, and you know that person is, and you're tracking everybody coming out because they got to return the band, so you know who went out and what time they went out. So people will try to space it, that's fine, but you still know they were in the club together, and you have the cameras in the club. Just like I'm watching this movie and she's looking at the footage of the club. There's CTE in Britain. The club has to have cameras. And she sees the guy that she met at the club and the footage of their interaction and everything else. So you can't delete that. That has to stay in the cloud for 10 years or something like that. Truly, for a long period of time. Because if you look at these rape cases, they come up 10, 20 years later. Truly. People sometimes, when you get date raped, you don't remember things. It's really fuzzy to you. You feel abnormal, but you're not sure. That's why these doctors and that, the dentist and that rape got away with it for a long period of time. Because of what? They got away with it for that period of time because people weren't sure. People were not sure. They had some fuzzy recollection. They don't feel right, but they don't remember, and they don't want to outright accuse. So, I just woke up with a headache, and I don't remember the last couple of hours. Did I really have that much to drink? And you can call the club and ask. So with the band, everybody, when they buy a drink, is scanned. And what drink they get is correlated to them. So you can track them. Truly. It's a simple scan. And the scanner can be on the bar. You order a drink and you scan your band, and it correlates that drink with you. Or some other type of scanner where the bartender has it and just scans you really quick. And then the order is calculated, opens a tab in the POS system, making it efficient for them. They open it up and it can close out the cash. But every drink is recorded. Everything you purchase is recorded to you. And if you're purchasing for other people, they have to have their band scanned that you open the tab and who's on the tab. And so exactly how much they consume, well, that's going to be up to the table, and that's a variable, but we know everybody at the table. How many people at the table, one bottle per this, and so on, and it's up to who? The bottle service hostess or host to watch who's consuming and who isn't consuming, and how fast they're consuming. It's up to them to monitor their station, their responsibility. And so, but everybody there, we know who's drinking what, basically, roughly. But truly, and it's very easy, it's very fast. Things move at the speed of a photon. That's why I'm all for the supercomputers and super fast. So we can do these things and it doesn't slow down sales. It doesn't deter. Everything moves through really quick. But nightclubs and casinos, they have to do that. When you come in, you get carded and you get a band. And we know you're on property. And when you go to a table or a slot, you scan your band. And on the backside, if you want to join the rewards program, that's fine. But it's anti-money laundering. Oh, anti-money laundering. You can just do cash and whatever. That's fine. But it's recorded to who you are. And so you don't want the casinos, as they use them in Vegas, and drug dealers all the time use casinos as money laundering. They come in, they lose some money, the drug dealers, and they do. They lose a few money, and then they walk out and they declare it as winnings because they play with cash, they leave with cash, they don't get a Players Club card, and they say, I won this money at Bally's Casino. And so they send in a bunch of people, and they actually lose money. They can win, but usually they're not that good. They don't care about winning. And they lose money. Either way, they're going to declare it as winnings, but they really don't want to win. Why? Because you track payouts. You don't track receivables, but you track payouts. That's why they lose. Because if you pay somebody out, casinos ask for what? Your information, because the IRS wants to know who won what. So usually they never want to win, because that means their winnings are tracked. So they always want to be a loser. And that's the cost of laundering money. And they know that. That's the cost of doing business. To them, that's just normal. Like in Ozark, he used the casinos to launder money. But now everybody's tracked, even if they pay cash. And if they future want to open it up, you can credit it to them and open it up a players club. But it's for anti-money and knowing your client. Because you don't want to pickpocket. You don't want people passing counterfeit bills. You don't want people drugging your people. And like the casino downtown here in Chicago, the guy won a bunch of money. I think it was at Rivers, and he fouled them all the way back to Midway. When he left with lots of money. And he fouled them, and when he pulled in his driveway, they robbed him and ended up killing him. They were in the casino. But now everybody in the casino is tracked. Less likely that they're going to be there watching a high roller and then rolling them. But I watched people like sheiks come in with suitcases with $500,000, $1 million in cash. And truly, with an armed guy, and they're holding it, the handcuff to the thing, and they reach in and grab wads of cash, and they're playing at the table. The only thing is, are they laundering money for a terrorist organization? So you need to know your client. And this is a way you know your client. And we come in anti-money laundering, protection. We protect people from date raping and everything else. Truly, from taking advantage of either way, male to female, female to male. So again, like Spy Bar and Y Bar and that, and you can make it, and they can say it's industry standard for Chicago, and the city of Chicago can enforce it, and that includes tourists and everything else. And if somebody steals your intellectual property, you know they've been on your premise. If they steal the music, truly, they go in with their phone, and they're at a concert, and they don't take video. They just bring in a recording device, and they steal the track from the concert. Where did they do this? The Grateful Dead allowed it. So people would bring in recording device. John Anderson, he had hundreds and hundreds of dead tapes from live shows. But they gave away the music for free because they wanted to sell the tickets. But I don't think they needed to do that. But again, people come in with recording devices, even to a movie, and they're just recording audio tracks. So the songs in the movie, the voices and everything else, and they're just recording the audio track. And so they can have it in their pocket in that. Now you know everybody with the ticket sales, they have to be ID'd. Small kids, that's why I believe even little kids, they have a state ID. Remember Napster? It almost crushed the music industry from residuals. So, you know your client. And so, your credit card sales has to track with your cameras. When somebody pays at McDonald's, they pay with their credit card, they pay with their cash, it goes into a folder, and it correlates them to cash. and they pay with credit card. This person paid with credit card, and it correlates them to credit card. What happens if they use a fake credit card? You have that person who used the credit card, and it's correlated to the purchase. Cameras can sync up to POS systems. This is what Dean did with Chris at Jimmy John's. Do you know that? Dean, in technology, integrated his camera systems with the register. And so everything that was ringing in the register for an order was also tracked to real time in the camera. And that's how they caught one of their managers stealing. Because he thought, okay, I'm ringing it up, the camera can't, but nah. Everything he was ringing was showing up real time, and it showed up what he was doing with orders, and then they see the film. So Dean integrated. Now Jimmy John's, he could have sold this to, but he created himself custom software to integrate the POS system with the register. Now, how about if you think about gambling? You have the people and their cards and their bets are correlated to the camera, and it goes into a vault under what? Their ID. Everything gets stolen. Everybody gets a file that enters the property. And the files are there if needed to access them, to catch thieves, used a fake credit card, was money laundering, or dropped something in somebody's drink. You stop this at clubs when you know that. People aren't going to dose people. Truly, if somebody goes missing and they're like, oh, she had too much to drink and I'm just helping them, that's because they dosed them, right? She's just sick and, that's okay. She just had too much to drink and I'm helping her home, which a guy I know did. But the girl, he was supposed to take her to her house and just put her in and then leave her. He took her to his house. And she went into his bed to fall asleep, and he tried to get all over her. And she kicked him numerous times to get away. But the point is, I was with her. She wanted to be with me, but he interceded. And like, oh no, I got to take my friend home. Okay, so you're taking Jen is her first name, and this guy, which Michael, Jimmy, and David know, and nicknamed him, not as a joke, but truly. And he's lucky. He's lucky. He did attempt to sexually molest her. And the funny thing is, he finally got a girl, but the girl he got was only a deal till she graduated college. But it was straight up. And when she graduated, she told him over a couple of years they were together, I'm going to leave you. And when she graduated, she left. But it was as my client introduced me, the sugar daddy relationship. He had a sugar daddy relationship. And those are straight up. I expect this for this. Companionship. It's up to them inside of it. It's not necessarily means you're going to have sexual interaction. But it was a sugar daddy, and sugardaddy.com is the website of my client. He wanted me to set up things so he couldn't be taken advantage financially. Then he introduced me to the website. I never knew it existed. And okay, and he's like, before I get on this website, I want to set up some spendthrift and some asset protection, and how do I protect my real estate and everything else. So just in case I get in a relationship and this person tries, I get in this sugar daddy relationship and this girl tries to take me for all I am. Okay. I want to set up a trust in these things to separate the assets from me so they can only get what I give them. So I don't want to be tied to my assets. The poor own everything, the rich own nothing. That's why they set up trusts in that. to separate themselves, to protect themselves from people taking financial advantage of them. So anyways, so I was talking to him about setting all that up. We never eventually did it, but to me, it was an experience, and I understood he's going on the site, and he was doing the right thing. He needed to make sure that if he goes into this, that before he enters this, that he's going to put everything in the proper place so he can't be fleeced. Like my friend John, the guy moved in with the girl, and the girl quick claimed his condo. And before he knew the quick claim was in, what did the girl do? The girl, they were out by the beach and that in a parking lot, and he was going really slow, and she opened the door and fell out. And when she did, she got scrapes and bruises, and she called 911 and said that he assault and battery her. He opened the door and pushed her out, and she got a restraining order because she moved in and was living with him. And once she went to court right away and got the restraining order, he wasn't allowed to go back to his own condo because she was living there. And then he found out that, and she did fraudulently do this, she quick claimed the condo. Now, she owned this condo, and he couldn't go back. She was a squatter. But she staged all this, and this is true. And I helped the guy through all of it, and he got the girl out, and he got the condo back, and the girl should have went to jail. I don't know that end of it. But she faked. Remember I told you the story with Jen? She got upset and when we were driving and I'm like, no way. But she's not trying to set me up. There was no advantage for her to do that unless she wanted to get a restraining order on me and use that as that I was, and ruin my reputation somehow. But that's not why she was doing it. She just wanted to get away from me so she can get breathing space. We had it one time downtown here. We went to a FedEx, and we were working on the computer to do this PowerPoint presentation, and it got down and we couldn't finish the deliverable. And I said, fine. I said, Jen, I didn't plan enough time in that, and the presentation's fine. We didn't finish. And she wanted to finish. I said, I have to go. The meeting is up there, and I have to, and we have to cut it short. And I said, it's my bad. And I kept on telling her, it's my bad. But she got so upset, she disappointed me that she wasn't able to get through it. And I kept on telling her, it's not, I didn't give you enough time. We couldn't do this. It's my fault. But she got upset, and we were in the car, and I was going to take her back to the house before I went to the meeting. And she said, I need to get out. I need to get out right now. And she grabbed the door, and I said, whoa. And I made sure the lock button down, keep on pressing it, can't open the door. And I said, I pull over right away. And I pulled over immediately, and I opened the door, and she went for a walk and cooled down, and I saw her at home, and everything was good. And I again told her it was my fault. I didn't plan enough time. I didn't know how long it was going to take. Like when she showed up late for our first Christmas together, and she was bringing me a gift, a recording, and she ran late, about a half an hour, 45 minutes. Instead of getting mad, I went for a walk and saw the Christmas tree that was down on Logan. And when I walked back, she was there at my door. Then she ran to me and she slipped on the sidewalk. I made sure that never happened again. The sidewalk was always, I do it on my own. I salt it. She never slipped and fell again. But she sprung right up, and she was embarrassed. She slipped in front of me, and she wasn't hurt. There were no scratches on her body or anything, but still, she was more embarrassed. But I'm not going to have her slip and fall again. So I take it on my premise. James did a good job, but if I know she's coming over, I'm raising, like cleaning the bathroom, changing my sheets and everything else. I moved to a whole new level of standard. And the funny thing is, she never knew this. Not during our breakup, not after. She never knew the things that I did to make sure that she was in a very healthy place. And this is other reason losing her killed me. And I told her, there's so much I'm doing that you don't understand behind the scenes. Like when she go to the nightclubs and that, I have people watch her in Vegas, New York, and others, my friends that ran the places. Like she lived in Skokie. My friend was a detective, eventually the chief of police. And I told her, like my old girlfriend in Skokie, I gave him his number and I gave her his number. If his mom or any of them had problems, Charles or any of them had problems, Jen had the number to the chief of police of the Skokie Police Department, direct line to his personal phone. And he made a promise to watch over, and if she calls, he would deal with the issue himself. He wouldn't send the squad out. He would deal with the issue himself. So nothing ever happened, but again, she forgets all these things, and I had her back in everything. I believe in two becoming one. And she's a righteous girl, and their family are righteous people. So the whole point is I'm saying that sometimes these people get into this, like Sylvia, another one of my friends. I told her what to do in that and run the background. The guy faked the references, paid people. He wrote down numbers, and they called, and I don't know if they were legitimate phones or burner phones, but she called all the references that he gave, and they said, yeah, he was a good tenant. He paid his rent on time and everything else. And there was no history of him ever squatting on a property. She did the background check, and there was no history, and he moved in, and he was a squatter. All his references were fake. Now, the thing is, she didn't check out his job and his ability to pay. Usually squatters squat for a reason, because of economics. We have housing vouchers and other things for people that can't afford, and there's sliding scale and subsidies, which is Section 8 and everything. So these people are just scumbags. There are systems to take care of them for people, but also you don't want to support criminals in that moving to Section 8, and they did. It's like Cabrini Green and Robert Taylor homes. A lot of those apartments and all that, they were using for their drug dealing and everything else. And they were using the housing vouchers, and they weren't paying anything for rent. And everything they made from drug dealing in the complexes and gangbanging was net. And the city was subsidizing everything. Their power, their electric, their water, their rent. And the gangbangers, every penny they made, they got to keep. They got to keep. And they were doing this in Robert Taylor and Cabrini Green. They had whole floors. All the units. And the city, they weren't paying anything. And the city was paying all the utilities and everything. It's like in Europe, terrorists were moving in under same thing, housing subsidy and everything else, and they were paying for everything. They were paying for everything. That's why I told you the bums have to go away. We have to weed out. And if you allow them to stay on the street, we can't weed them out. You know, just like the girl got kidnapped in Utah, those were two homeless people, male and female, that kidnapped her. And they were living somewhere in a remote region camping. That's where she was, living in a tent. But the whole point is, we can't have that anymore. Either you're in a program, you have to be accounted for, and we have to be able to monitor you. You can't monitor them when they live on the street. The hobos used to jump on the cars and that, move places to places, but they did a lot of criminal activity. They were very bad people. They were running all kinds of scams, and they used the train, the freight cars, hop in and move from town to town, and they would go in and fleece, rape, and do all kinds of criminal activity, then hop on the train and move. The same thing they do in the United States. Watch American Greed. And so these people move from community to community, fleecing the community. So again, I'm not saying every homeless person is a bad person, but the point is, people need to track. And that's why I believe in all renting should be on your credit report. Every property that you ever rented needs to be on the credit report. And on-time payments, not on-time payments, and it needs to be part of your credit report. This helps good, poor people build credit. So you say negative? No, it's good. And even if you're in a Section 8 or reduced, I lived in Section 8 in Tucson with Eric. Our first property that me and Eric lived into was on more of a dirt lot, small Section 8 house. We lived in Section 8. I lived in Section 8. It was livable. It could have been a little bit better, but everything functioned. We didn't have any problems with the toilets or sinks or fridge or stove or any of it. Everything, the swamp cooler, everything functioned. It's just a lot what could have been kept around it a little bit better. Truly. But they did a good job with the property. We didn't have any bugs or anything. And it had screen doors, bar doors, and that. But the thing is, I learned in Arizona, it's great to prevent you from thieves, but it also becomes a death trap. Our house that I lived in had the bars so people couldn't get in, but you can't get out. And a firefighter, they have to pry off and cut those bars. So literally, it can become a death trap. So yes, you're trying to prevent bad guys from coming in, but also, you could be locking into your own freaking funeral. So I realized that all the bars on the window and that, sometimes that's great to keep the bad guys out. But also, on the backside, I realized that if we ever have a fire and we get trapped in an area, we're dead. So all those houses in Arizona are also death traps. So there's a trade-off. And so you have to have what? Fire extinguishers on property. And if you're going to have bars on the window and they have to prevent people from getting in, then you're going to have fire extinguishers in those rooms, and you have to do more inspections of the property, the fire marshal, to make sure those are zoned correctly, the electrical wires and everything else, that the residence is protected properly. So it doesn't get into a situation where you have to go through the door, and like in New York, and people died in these units in New York, go back through the records. People had, because of the 70s and all the violence, they had the little slide bar and then all the locks on the doors, and then the building ended up getting on fire. Sometimes arson, because the arsonist knows that everybody's trapped in like a freaking rat because they're scared of bad people. So they let the building go ablaze. They can kill everybody in the building. Oh, arsonists love those type of places. They're not doing it for money. We're talking about people that want to burn people to death. They love those types of situations. They're like a rat in a cage and can't get out, and all you do is set the cage afire and watch them burn. So the thing is, how fast can you get out? What do you think they have the panic bar on the doors? It says emergency exit only, but it's locked, but you can just press the panic bar and you're right out. So this whole security thing, you don't understand. I understand all this, and the best way is to crush the bad people. Get rid of them, crush them, minimize them. Don't let them make you a prisoner. My hood, my block. Now it's a freaking prison you live in. And why do you think all the violence in New York? Literally, everybody felt like a prisoner where they lived. They go out and they had to be very careful. Then they come back in. They lock all 6 fucking locks on the door and everything else. And that creates a prison mentality. Good people turn into prisoners. And then when somebody's getting raped, like the girl who got killed, and she yelled and screamed and called the cops, and people closed the shades and everything else and wouldn't buzz her in. And now they're thinking it could be a setup, but they could have called 911, but no one did. And the guy caught up and he killed her. And you can look, I published the case. But they get into a prison house mentality. What you want to do is these commercial properties and the bank and that, you want to put in penalties. Like in the mortgage, if you get a felony, the mortgage will be accelerated and we will repossess the property. Certain felonies like murder, rape, pedophilia, armed robbery. So that includes burglary or whatever, armed robbery, any type of violent crime. Now, domestic violence comes in, and what happens? We can kick you out. You still have to pay the mortgage. And we have a domestic violence protection clause. And we'll get an order of protection and ban you from the property and within a certain 1 mile radius or whatever from the property. The bank can put this in the clause for the mortgage. Domestic Violence Protection Clause. And the bank does it. Now they evict you, but you still have to pay the note if you're the breadwinner, or still have to pony up your money. It doesn't get you out of your financial obligation. And then we use lawyers and that to go after garnished wages and do collections. And so banks and that, lenders, renters and that, you can put it into a rental agreement. Same thing. Domestic violence protection. And that means the parents to the kids. Now, these all have to be substantiated and go through the legal processes and that. But once they are, then the covenant is exercised and you still have to pay the rent for them to stay in the property. So again, they can put this into renters agreements, into mortgages, and that automatically there's an acceleration and we take away the property. And if you bought the property legal, like I said, if you do any of the felonies and you get caught for drug dealing, it exercises the acceleration clause and we take away the property from you. Our notes due immediately and we move for immediate eviction. So if you weren't in a criminal activity and go into a criminal activity, we're going to kick you out and we're going to seize the property. Now, the money goes to the court. When we sell it, you don't get the money. The money goes in escrow to pay any types of fines and rejuvenation and rehabilitation, I should say, or whatever. So any equity above that goes into the fund. And you have to pay for your lawyer or pay on a sliding scale for the public prosecutor. And you could move into a halfway house. Truly, we don't dump you on the street. We put you in a halfway house. Halfway houses are designed for people that have serious criminal behavior. So we can work all these out. And so here the city of Chicago can be the testing ground for all of this. Working out the clause, and then we can make a proposal to the United Nations and see how many other countries want to buy in for their financial system, banking, lending, renter, and it goes for commercial businesses as well. If your business is found to do anything with a criminal organization, we can pull your business license, yank your business, and then we prosecute. The bank needs to turn over everything to the prosecutor. The lenders need to turn it over to the prosecutor to prosecute the business. They defrauded the creditor, and that can be a felony. They lied about the source of funds, and the funds were coming from racketeering and criminal organizations, criminal behaviors. So again, we can cleanse this whole city and whole state. And then we can move throughout the United States and U.S. territories and throughout the world. This is a forever purge. You don't get the choices anymore. Those that have the gold make the rule, called the golden rule. And God owns everything. So God makes all the rules. You just shut up and comply. You have the right to do or die. So if you don't do, then you have the right to die. That's your choice. But truly, we need to put the systems in place. I'm sick and tired of these scumbags. I told you about my first breakdown. Everything I did with Jen and everything, I worked harder and 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 harder. And did more charitable, did everything. All I know is to do more and more and more and righteous. That's all I know. That's all I do. All I try to figure out every day is how to be more righteous. And the thing is, God watched that as it destroyed my relationship, as people lied, cheated, and stole my money. They stole my intellectual properties. They stole my business. They backstabbed me and colluded against me. And that led up to my first breakdown. And it cost me my wife, my family. I would have children. I would be married. I would be happy. And then I stepped it up. After I lost Jen and everything, I stepped up everything. I accelerated the amount of goodness exponentially. I went manic on goodness. I did more. And before my first breakdown, I went to Ghana. I did missions. I was helping to build a charter school. I was helping with after-school programs. I Have a Dream and many others. I was helping the YMCA with their educational resources and so on. That's all before the first breakdown. And then the first breakdown, I accelerated it 10 times that pace. Thinking, there's no way you could do it to me again. As God said, they're going to do it to you again in 16. And I'm thinking, no way. make the announcement and tell them I'll threaten them all. And if they hurt you and impoverish you and take away your life, everybody responsible, I'll end them upon their death. And you get to watch. Like hanging and that, we used to watch. That's the victim's right. They always invite the victim to the execution. Do you know that? For the electric chair or hangings or lethal injection, the victim has every right to be at the electrocution. God does it. It comes from the Bible. Just to let you know, the victim has the right to see the predator put to death. If they want. They don't have to show, but they have their priority in seating. They have every right to see the execution. And so God said, upon my death, I will see all the executions. They'll go into purgatory, waiting for me to die if they already predeceased me, and I will see their executions. Victims' right. God is righteous and just. So you think you're going to get away with it. In death, I'm going to watch you be slaughtered. But I stepped it up. There is no way. I had a record year in 2015. My health was booming in the right direction. There is no way they would do this to me. And then I started with the handouts of information, which I've been already doing. Ask Simon in that during the first breakdown. I've been doing this for a while. I went with Harvest around handing out little booklets of information, but I went way beyond Harvest. It just showed where the soup kitchen was and the shelter was. They didn't have anything like I did. But I was handing out the small businesses and you name it. I accelerated everything exponentially. But I've been doing it in silence. People didn't know. Nick didn't know. Simon and them, I mentioned a little bit, but they weren't there and seeing it. I haven't changed. But I accelerated the pace exponentially, like Urban Ministries. Julie Kim used to call me when I moved from Covenant, and she called me all the time. They didn't have anyone. So I decided to do a year straight, every week for a year. Be there, cook dinner. And so I committed. Because she called me this week, and then I'd be like, okay, in a few months maybe. Then she'd call me again next week, and call me again, and call me again. And I said, I didn't tell her never to call me again. I said, okay, that's fine. I'm your guy. I'll do it for a year straight, every week. And then eventually they terminated it sometime in 2016. They ended it, me doing it. But I got in, 3/4 of a year? Every week? Every week of the month, I was there. Preparing all the food and serving them. And I only stopped because they cut me out and forced me to stop. It's just like the mission committee, our mercy committee, they cut me out and they closed it without even my acknowledge, or I did the mercy board, I did all these things, and they just stopped. I was going to buy the church from C. Sanchez, this send out business cards, these digital business cards that send you a text message that you can upload to your Outlook and that for the church Covenant. C already said he was going to do it. And for him, it would be a test case to get into other churches. So I was going to pay, and he said, a waive. I talked to Julie about the digital business cards. And I was going to do it for the church, for the pastors and the administration, and the people can get this, the parishioners and that, and it would have all the schedule of the services, the website, any other charitable, like World Vision and everything else would be in there. Our preferred charities, one of them was World Vision, which they didn't know. I dealt with World Vision in Atibabu, Ghana. Atibabu, Ghana. He was a Japanese guy, really good Asian guy, who gave me the layout of World Vision and what they were doing and how most of these people, they see Asian. I'm Japanese, but they see Chinese because they're doing the telephone lines. But the thing is, what did the Chinese do wrong? Is they got to be very careful of HIV too, and HIV and other diseases as they move through Western Africa and that, building out the infrastructure and that. And they have to make sure the soil and everything going back to China, they have their issues, but they also don't want to import issues. So that's why I posted that stuff on Tumblr. Because they were building infrastructure and that for anyone going there. You don't want to have what I posted with Vietnam. They came back with super gonorrhea. A strand of gonorrhea that was even more disease resistant. The gonorrhea strand here was weaker. Drugs took care of it very easily. The one they brought back from Vietnam was super gonorrhea. Highly drug resistant, highly aggressive. A very, very, very nasty STD. The one here was mild. The one coming back from Vietnam, super gonorrhea. But they brought back some other things as well. So when we move over to these places and that, bringing back our troops, 80 countries, 750 military bases, unlike we do with astronauts, we should do with, unlike what we do with astronauts, we should do with military troops. They have to go through a whole process making sure they're not going to import diseases back to the United States. And they have to do consistent health checks on them. So again, we have to put these things, and that astronaut protocol has to trickle on down to the State Department and everything else. And anyone dating military troops, they have to go through the approved scenario. We can't have what the Russians did when they used female assets to take advantage of our military intelligence personnel. We can't have that, like with the blacklist. He was, I don't know how, remember how, but female, male, they were in a relationship. And so they have to go through the pre-screening. And if they don't want to go through it, then you can't date them. And if you do, it's a felony. You can go to jail. It's to protect people at the State Department from people getting leverage on them. Truly, their outside business activities, I had to do this in financial services. And I had to declare all my outside business activities. So I was part of the Schaumburg Chamber of Commerce, the Rosemont Chamber. I did this for Urban Ministries and so on. Truly, my activities, gambling or whatever. And they get to look at all our trades and our securities and our bank account. Making sure that we're not doing anything that we shouldn't be doing. So, preventing you from getting in gambling debt and somebody getting leverage on you by paying off your loan and then taking that over and loan sharking you. That's how they do it. And then they get you to do illegal things for them because you're indebted to them. That's why I believe in Gamblers Anonymous and that. But Gamblers Anonymous also has to go with credit counseling and other scenarios to restructure debt. Sometimes the casinos, through their charities, can forgive the debt. I don't believe in bankruptcy. I believe in charitable organizations forgiving the debt. And I believe casinos give to a charity that supports Gamblers Anonymous. And it can give them a partial stipend to a full stipend based on need. And their full debt can get forgiven. But the casino knows that. It goes into their history. And they limit their gambling. I watched Peter, who owns the Hard Rock, with Michael. And Michael wanted to get a lot of money, a line of credit, a huge one. And Peter told him, I can't give you that much. You have to have the ability to pay back the debt. I was right there. And Michael's sister was one of the top female Texas Hold'em players in the world. And we stayed at the Golden Nugget on her because she used to play at the Golden Nugget all the time. And we got free room and meals and that. That's through Michael. And indirectly, his sister took care of me. I actually never met her. I just know about her. And she was a bigwig in Texas Hold'em in Vegas. One of the top female Texas Hold'em players in the world, I guess. And so the casinos all wanted her to play at their casino. And in turn, they gave her very good perks. But Michael, he used to like pot roast. And he liked the end cut of the pot roast. Most people don't like it because it's too salty. But because Michael, in his poor health condition, he craved the sodium. God rest his soul. He had multiple heart attacks and then almost died multiple times. He was revived on the table and then eventually died. But again, I realized that he had some serious issues because most people don't want the end cut in that way because it tends to be a little bit salty. But it's good, a little bit of it. But again, anyways, the whole point is that the casinos can put this self-protection thing in place. And who gets the glory? The casinos. They don't look like the wicked, evil stepchild that you don't want in your neighborhood. Truly. And the state lottery, Powerball and that, has to watch that as well because people get excessive with those. And they have to have the same thing, Gambling Anonymous and that. And if they have problems and they can run a charitable where they can offer some type of forgiveness, but you have to go through Gamblers Anonymous and credit counseling and everything to get it. You have to go through the counseling services. You have to go there and go through and get approved. You know, they started this with mortgages and that, forcing people into credit counseling. But banks can make that mandatory part of the mortgage clause that if your debt to assets get under a certain thing that you have to go to credit counseling, and with credit counseling they can help restructure, and with approval the bank will take a point or a half a point or 25 basis points off the loan as a goodwill gesture for going through credit counseling. And so the banks can incentivize you, and part of the mortgage clause that you have to go to credit counseling. And then through credit counseling, they also offer they work with labor services. They offer gig economy jobs that you can get a secondary or a satellite job to earn some extra cash. So I'm down here in Museum Park. You know, it's beautiful down here. Oh, and I forgot to show you the area with the trail in Bucktown. But again, this can be done, and they can put this into the mortgages, preventing them from going up, just like on businesses. Business loans and that, the creditors can put in that counseling, and you have to go through certain counseling services, and that you have to get certain consulting help if your business moves in and it's mandatory or the debt's accelerated. And why? It's how do you say, a clause in the contract to stop them from, like, they do for self-harm. So it's a self-harm prevention clause that is triggered, that forces you into credit counseling. And part of that, you'll get some forgiveness on your debt. And it also requires you to bring in consulting to take a look at your operations to see what you can improve or what you need to shed inside your operations. It's triggered in the debt covenant. I want to get rid of bankruptcy. I want restructuring, and eventually people restructure and they sell off. They can't manage it. Like Dean did, they restructured and they ended up selling their 2 Jimmy Johns because it was in their best interest to shed them. So again, through the restructuring, it proves that it's better for you not to keep the business and to shed the business. It's part of the debt covenant. And hindsight, you said, well, we could have. No, the entity gets sold off. But how the covenant has to go through a restructuring process, and it has to go through the court. So it doesn't get rid of the restructuring court, but you don't need to do Chapter 13 or any of that. This is before that. Trying to preserve your credit rating. You don't want it to get that bad, like Trump going into the reorganization, Chapter 13. You want to get it before. You want to have higher standards, and it triggers it, and you have to go to counseling. Management does, truly, and they have to take a look at your business and your purchases and your receivables, and you have to get consulting and brought in, truly. And this, I want bankruptcy for personal and individual to go away altogether. You might be told in counseling you have to sell your house. And that's the formal thing, and it goes through the court, and they do the liquidation. So it's a court-ordered liquidation. Why? That keeps you from penalties and that with the IRS and so on. So you need to break certain contracts with unions and that. So you did all the study. You don't need to go into reorganization. You did all the study, and then you present it to the court, and it says the union contracts have to be broken and restructured. And it puts you into renegotiations with the union. But you're still very credit worthy. Chapter 13, your credit's shit. And likelihood of coming out, not good. So this forces it before you become a 50-50, trying to keep it like a 70-25 standard, where 70% emerge great because before, and only 25 end up being liquidated. But still, it's in lieu of it, and you keep a better standing in the business community, and when you want debt and everything, you complied, and they're willing to work with you in the future. So you preserve your reputation. So you can try again. And that stabilizes the market. I want to get out of the other things. I want the contracts and the covenants and everything to be structured properly. And I don't want banks to be holding, like in Florida, all those banks holding all these property notes on drug dealer properties. And you know how many banks went upside down because of drug dealer busts? Unbelievable in Florida, especially South Florida, that the banks got unbelievably shattered by losing the properties, and then the money laundering that was going through, propping them up, and the banks went under, taking all the good people down with them. Their stock went to zero. Their bonds became uncollectible. So we can do this correctly. What the hell? But anyways, we can do this right. And this is saving souls. The church should be behind this fully. This is saving lives before they hit this and people get everything destroyed. This gives the people to rebuild. This is creating a better safety net. The safety net before sucks. We need to create a better safety net so people don't fall as far. They can get rejuvenated. And this means there's less reason to be criminals. There's less reason to do bad things. This also minimizes violent crime of all forms, including domestic violence, because you're decentivized from doing those things and you're incentivized in doing the right things. And so I don't know what the hell is going on with my light. But we can incentivize people to do the right things. And you say, we don't want the crisis of 2008 again. We don't want these things to happen. We don't want casinos to get bad reputations. We don't want them to be tainted. We want them to do the right things. And remember, I watch people work in the casino and be bitten by their own thing. Just as I watched alcoholics become alcoholics, people in the bar industry and hospitality industry, like at Lusitana or GM and Pauli or Sommelier, they became alcoholics. When I went to Benedictine College, our priest who ran the school, he had to go to AA. He became an alcoholic. Loneliness. You know what it's like to go into a cold bed every day? It's wonderful. I miss so greatly being able to go to bed with Jen and wake up with Jen. It's awesome to have that person next to you. Being a priest is a very lonely thing, and priests have high rates of alcoholism and drug abuse, truly, and emotional breakdowns and other things, because unlike pastors, they don't have that other person. They have fellowship and everything else. But unlike being in a monastery, they run across a lot more. If you want to put yourself on an island, and that's what a monastery is, and they isolate themselves, and they control and micromanage that inside the monastery, but you don't really travel much or anything. You're just in the monastery. And so most priests, they don't want to be in the monastery. They like going around, and they like traveling here, and they like interacting with the congregations. They like going out to dinner. They like doing and having a social life. They like to play softball and everything else, which they should. So the point is, they become incredibly lonely. And it gets them, and it ends up really sucking later in life. I watched it with Benedict and others. I've been watching the popes, and it's really lonely. You're in that room every night all by yourself. And it is horrible. God doesn't want that for me. He ordered that I must have a woman. I must be in a covenant with a woman. I must go to bed with a woman every night and wake up with a woman. Physically, flesh on flesh, in the same bed. Intimate with each other. So you don't understand. It's very hard for them. Even if they don't become pedophiles, I watch alcoholism and so many other things get them that it's unbelievable. And it's a very sad and isolated. They don't have anyone to share it with. God is there, but God created Eve for Adam. He understands that. He understands that you need this physical intimacy, this connection. So I don't agree with that. I agree with Martin Luther and all that. I think Catholicism is wrong on that. And my friend Michael Kang, his father's a pastor and he's a historian. He studies the church. And they did that so they didn't create fiefdoms. Because the Catholic Church wanted to control everything and they didn't want them to raise their kids to be the future pastor. But why not have multi-generational pastors in a congregation where the pastor might mentor their kid to succeed them, like in any other thing? And you can have a family that's multi-generational pastoral. But he said the history of it, they didn't want that. They wanted the power to appoint and so on and so forth. And the Catholic Church was too power hungry. And in that power loss, see, before this, do you know, priests used to be able to have wives? Do you know that? It wasn't from the beginning. They married. They had wives. It was something they put in later. It was a power grab. So don't tell me Catholicism can't change and go retro to the way it was. So it hasn't always been that way for Catholicism. And that's a fact. And I have historians that can tell you that. And the reason they put it in, it wasn't always that way. Priests could get married and have kids and mentor their kids. And that's how it was back in those days. That you mentored your kid and your kid stepped into your role. Like if you were a blacksmith, you would mentor your kid for your whole life, and your kid would step into your role and become a blacksmith. Jesus stepped into Joseph's role. Joseph was a master carpenter. Jesus followed that plan and became a master carpenter. That's why when the Jews for Jesus say that my Lord was a master carpenter. He was a construction. He was a builder. In every sense, Jesus was a builder. And so were the disciples, builders. They were trying to refine and get rid of these things that were destroying society and trying to move it in the right direction. So again, this is how it was. So no, priests used to marry and have kids and mentor their kids, and their kids would take over the congregation and become the pastor. So they were like priests. And the Catholic Church needs to go back. Those that are in, and they slowly phase in the new, but I worry about them and seniors. So there could be a covenant or an amendment, like we sometimes can amend the Constitution, and it would be with my blessing that it should have never been. It's like an annulment for a marriage that should have never happened. It's that type of process. You prove to God that it should have never been in the first place. And then they're let free of that bond and take the new covenant. What is the New Testament? We broke the old covenant and we created the new covenant. It's that cleansing. So it's like annulment. You're annulling the old covenant and making the new covenant. And the new covenant, the priests can get married. The nuns can get married. And if they want, they can mentor their kids to step in, walk in their footsteps. The ones that want to. It deepens their understanding of the Bible. They watch their father. They watch their mother. They're raised properly. Like Peter. He's with the newsboys. His father was a pastor. He doesn't talk much about his mother. But he was mentored correctly. Now he does songwriting. But he can write non-Christian songs, meaning he can write for other bands. Truly. So he doesn't have to just write Christian rock. He can write rock, but it would be with a more moral and ethical tone. He could write rap. He can diversify. But it always has the religious base governing his morals of how he structures his words and notes and everything. But the whole point is looking at a picture of the Mona Lisa. So we can create the new covenant within the Catholic Church and return to the way it should be. The way it is wrong and unholy. So it needs to go back to the way it was. And I realized this when I went to a Catholic college. I chose to go to a Catholic college. I didn't want to leave, but the things that were going on were incorrect. And I was forced out. And this has been my whole life. So, I don't get it. They force me out. They're demonic. The demon within inside, like In Excess says. The devil inside them. And in college, I was taking care of the black kid next to me, Henry. And he used to put a lot of moisturizer. Maybe it was Jerry Curl or whatever. But anyways, white people don't know that. The activator and all that. Their hair needs. So the do-rag. This is cultural understanding. So I used to watch over him. And I hung out with a bunch of black people. They were on the basketball team. I don't think we had a black person on the football team. But we did have a bunch of black basketball players. Our basketball team was pretty good. This is Benedictine College in Anson, Kansas. But again, we can move to a better future. So, like I said, the city of Chicago, and this is why I said, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as is in heaven. So we need to work these things out. I'm here. And this is where I want it to happen. Working through and perfecting. Like perfecting our casino model on that, working through Bally's now that's building the new one, and others. So we can be a city of incredible morals and ethics. We can be a state of incredible morals and ethics. And eventually we can share with the world and hopefully maybe move the needle in the right place, discouraging global criminal activity, discouraging domestic violence, discouraging violence in general, discouraging crime. People are going to try to get around it, but it will be a lot better than it was. So even in the safest places in Singapore, they still have full police forces. So again, there's a lot for them to do to make sure things stay in place correctly. They become the peacekeepers, the peacemakers. Truly, that's what law enforcement was. They come to violence and they become the peacekeepers. They bring it down. They bring the peace. And they bring the solution. Do you need Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous? Why is the violence going on? That's part of the police report. And we'll have a social worker visit you. Truly. And we're going to set up for a social worker to come over. Part of it, the call is that a social worker, and the social worker does assessment and says, okay, well, you need to go into couple counseling, and we'll set up things with the therapist. And the government will subsidize if you don't have the money. So, again, they are supposed to work hand in hand with social workers working hand in hand with therapists. And so they can say, you need to go to AA or whatever. This is caused through, excess alcohol consumption. Okay. You note it in the police work, and the social worker will have to visit. And you'll have to spend time with the social worker. And they'll make an assessment and then recommend you. And if you don't take the recommendation, then the court you'll get a summons to go to court, and then the judge will have to make a formal recommendation. And they might side with you that you don't need it. But right now it's a warning, which can become a ticket. So they issue a warning, and you meet with the social worker. And if the social worker thinks you, and she writes her report, and if you're being deceptive or anything along those lines, then the social worker notes, and that goes to the judge, and then they turns into a ticket, and you have to go formally in the court. And now you have to work through the prosecutor with the social worker to make the assessment, because the prosecutor sits in with the social worker, making sure you're giving full disclosure since you weren't being compliant. Now we force compliance. So warnings can turn into tickets. So you don't get the stress of a ticket. You get pulled over about the headlight, you get a warning. And then you prove the court that you take the warning in, it's not a ticket, and you got 30 or 60 days, and you go to court, and you prove that you got your headlight fixed. And then the warning's dismissed, and you get no points on your record. But if you don't take care of it, you have to show up in court, and then substantiate why you can't. And if you can't, then the court has a fund set aside, charitable, and they'll subsidize the purchase on a sliding scale. The court will pay $50, and you pay $50, up to the court paying 100% of replacing the light in your car. So they can put these things in place. And it comes as a warning, but the warning always stays there, but you don't get any dings because you took care of the issue. And even if you couldn't, you showed up in court and you substantiated that you could. But if you blew it off, then when you go to court, you get a ticket. And now we work through the formal structure of enforcement. Now we have to be more heavy-handed. We gave you self-compliance, and now we have to force compliance. So we give you goodwill until you violate, and we force compliance then, and no more goodwill. Then we force atonement. And that's what God does. Same thing. He gives you the ability to atone and repent. And if you don't, then he forces it. So one way or another, you're going to be forced to atone and repent. And especially if you've ever hurt me. But these things I go through, and I didn't turn out to be evil, and I turned away, and I did many great things for people at Benedictine and all these places I was at. So I look at you and I say, what excuse do you really have to be the piece of crap you are? And I say, not much. So either you get it together or you burn. That's your choice. Ending video blog.